I just watched Kyle Mooney's new movie, Y2K. Let's get into it. And obviously, if you haven't seen the movie, go ahead and save this to watch later so you don't get any spoilers. Duh. First of all, I want to say that it makes me feel some type of way that 2000 is now considered a period movie. That hurts. My students often call me elderly, but today I really feel it in my bones. Let's start with what I liked. Starting with the screen grab, super cute. Shout out if you haven't seen the movie Searching or Missing. They feature this the entire movie. I always think that's a super fun, cute way to find little Easter eggs and introduce characters. Plus, it totally sets the time period and the theming for the entire movie. If you couldn't guess that from the title. Speaking of adorable title shot, as he writes Y2K on a CD he just burned, fades beautifully into the title card. Chef's kiss, chef's kiss. And as every 2000s teen movie starts, we are introduced to Eli, played by Jaden Martell, who you guys probably know from the It franchise. We are quickly introduced to his best friend, Danny, played by Julian Dennison, who I haven't seen in anything since Deadpool and obviously Hunt for the Wilder People. Ricky Baker, it's your birthday. And it's crazy to see these guys all grown up. They're of legal age. I think my perception and time of them is so fucked because we're kind of close in age, but they're always cast in roles that were so much younger than them when they were starting out. So I think they're so much younger than me, but they are not. Also, Julian Dennison absolutely carries the energy of this movie. I adored him in this role. He was charming, fun, and everything. When they first arrive at the party, he absolutely embodies what it's like to be a dweeb who parties hard and really connects with people. And Jaden made me so sad because I have felt that awkwardness of being at a party and I don't feel like I'm actually invited and I don't feel like I actually fit in with anybody. Sometimes I feel like I don't always relate to these teen movies because I had the tamest high school experience of all time. I didn't go to my first party until I was like 20. And even then, I didn't drink until I turned 21. So sometimes I do yearn for the high school experience that I feel I missed out on. And then I watch movies like this and remember that, God, that would have been so painful, and I'm glad that I am no longer doing that. Speaking of other highlights in this movie, Kyle Mooney as Garrett is delightful. I am half convinced that he wrote this movie around this character. He came up with the character first and the whole movie fell into place afterwards. I think it's crazy because I feel like everybody knows one stoner white dude with dreads who happens to be like the nicest person and speaks with an accent that you just like can't really place. It's a super detailed character. Obviously, character work is such a strong suit of his, and he really shines in this movie. Also, I love that he pulled a Lin-Manuel Miranda. Wrote something just so he could direct and star in it. Other goods, it was really cool seeing Lachlan Watson, a non-binary actor, playing a character, and gender is not a part of it. It's not a thing. They weren't cast as the token trans person, which was really nice. There were so many great jokes in this movie. Between Eli calling Chris Soccer Chris. Because we all did that to differentiate people. If we knew 3 Laurens, one was like Spanish class Lauren or whatever. I still have so many people saved in my phone as like SEU blank. Theater blank. Comedy is indeed specificity. And great lines like the internet was made to share knowledge, spew vitriolic hate, and have sex in online chat rooms. And the way that they lean in character archetypes and stereotypes in this movie makes it super easy to digest. I think sometimes people see A24 and now they're afraid that it means it's going to be a moody think piece. And don't get me wrong, because most of the time that is completely correct. But this is a movie that was clearly made for easy consumption. And that's what I think people aren't gonna like about this movie. A24 has quickly skyrocketed to one of the highest regarded production companies currently in the industry. Obviously, I made pretentious horror for their movies, and half of why I wanted to go see this movie in the first place. I think if you walk into this movie being like, oh my gosh, I want to see a great comedy directed by Kyle Mooney, you're gonna love it, because that's exactly what this is. If you go into this movie expecting a horror movie, which it was kind of marketed as, I think you will feel underwhelmed. But mostly, if you go to see this movie because it is from A24 and you are expecting this crazy dramatic think piece that is exotic and exciting and new and fresh, you will find something that's new and fresh, but not in the artsy, pretentious way that A24 loves to do most of the time. As A24 grows more popular and expands, and they're producing more movies and they're buying more movies, obviously there's going to be some diversity in reception, diversity in genre, diversity in tone. For example, movies like Red Rocket and Dix the Musical, that have a lighter tone in comparison to a lot of the movies they release, flew entirely under the radar. Not that movies with people like Sean Baker and Nathan Lane always would fly under the radar. I feel like there's just become a certain expectation that A24 movies have a certain level of prestige and what's the word I'm looking for? A sense of self-seriousness about them, which ultimately I think is gonna hurt Y2K. One thing I love, and I've talked about many times before on this channel, is that one of my favorite elements is when a movie switches genres throughout the film, which I think this movie could have pulled off more surprisingly. If this movie was just marketed as a stoner comedy and then it transitioned into a horror comedy, that would have been really fun and surprising. But I think because I was expecting it to be a horror movie, and then for the first 25 minutes, it was just introductions and tonal shots. I just think if you wanted this to be a horror movie and you had to wait 25 minutes for anything to happen, I'd be a little frustrated. Now, thankfully, late night comedies are like one of my favorite genres of film, so this didn't bother me, but I could understand why it would bother a lot of viewers. It also made the pacing feel super weird for the rest of this movie. Because the introduction was so drug out, it felt like there were then 3 separate acts after the introduction. Plus, if you were expecting a horror movie, they literally have Fred Durst in this movie, playing himself. It gets pretty trippy. There are some great gore shots. I don't want to diminish that. A woman gets her head drilled in by a Tamagotchi. A guy's dick gets caught in a blender. There are some cool horror shots. But that's like the one scene at the party when the robots begin to take over. And then after that is mostly the veiled threat of violence, aside from Kyle Mooney's death. However, as a horror comedy, this movie really hits its mark. I think this movie is funny, has characters that actually show growth throughout the film, and a really fun premise. And I'm a sucker for any movie that makes me feel nostalgic, which I think is a huge selling point for this movie. People want nostalgia, even if it's not that long ago. And I think that alone could do some really exciting things for this movie. Now, of course, this probably will fly under the radar. This is a crazy month for movies. And I'm not even talking about December releases. We're still reeling from Wicked, Moana 2, and Gladiator 2, which are probably still going to be tops of the box office for the next few weeks. That's okay. A lot of A24 movies really do fly under the radar until awards season and everybody comes crawling out of the woodwork. Sadly, I don't think this movie takes itself seriously enough to earn any true accolades this award season. Obviously, notoriously, horror movies are skipped over, and horror comedies aren't even on the radar of Oscar voters. But who knows? Maybe this banging soundtrack and a bunch of references to Limp Bizkit, maybe enough to sell people. Oh, I did have a really fun time with this movie. I can't wait for it to come to streaming so I can watch it not sober. Cough, cough. Wink, wink. Ha, 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 ha. Oh, and also Rachel Zegler was okay. She's always fine. Does it say a lot that I talked about this movie for like 20 minutes in front of the camera and she didn't even come up once in my mind about it? This is not a Rachel Zegler hate account. I enjoy her. I just think in this movie, she was passable and nothing to really balk about. Me and Buck. Anyways, what did you guys think of this movie? There's a lot of references I feel like I missed, so let me know in the comments down below what your favorite parts were, what your favorite scenes were, and how you think people are going to like this movie. And if you like our content, feel free to subscribe. I make this all the time, and so does my best friend Louie. Anyways, it's closing time, and you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Bye.